What's the address of the emergency?
We are not using the audio that appears to be the 26-year-old victim. She told dispatchers an ex-boyfriend was calling her, threatening to shoot up her house, and she told dispatchers she had 2 children. Then dispatchers received a second call they believe from another adult female that was in the house, but that call dropped.
Hello? 911, we got a call from this number. Is everything okay? Where are you? Where are you?
Police were already on the way after the first call, but more officers headed to the street and the home after the second call.
They found a female, 26 years of age, who had been shot. They did first aid at the scene, but unfortunately she passed away later at the hospital.
Dayton Police Major Brian Johns told us they are following up on some information shared with them in the 911 calls.
There is information that we are aware of, that there was like a break-in there first, that there was like a fight taking place, and then the shots were actually fired, and she was struck and killed.
Police told me their forensic services unit recovered a lot of evidence that they are analyzing. They didn't want to tell me if someone in the home returned fire against the person that broke in or not. They also wouldn't confirm if the victim's children were in the home when the tragedy took place.
I cannot comment yet on that. We do have a person of interest that we're trying to follow up on. Our entire homicide unit right now is out working this complaint, trying to bring some resolution and some justice for the victim and her family.
She had just turned 26. Montanae Davis was a mother, a nurse, a friend, a daughter. Her days were filled with the kind of chaos and laughter only young children can bring. She worked long shifts caring for strangers, then rushed home to care for her own. Her smile was warm, disarming. Her voice, soft, steady, offered comfort to patients in their final moments and strength to her children when the world felt too big. To most, she was the image of resilience. A woman who had walked through heartbreak and come out standing. She had ended a difficult relationship, focused on herself, and slowly began finding joy again. New love came into her life like the morning sun, slow, gentle, promising. And she welcomed it. She shared that joy with the world, posting photos with her new partner, celebrating a fresh start. But on the night of April 2nd, 2024, as the city of Dayton, Ohio settled into darkness, Montanae picked up her phone and made a call. Her voice, this time, carried no comfort. It carried fear, real fear. She wasn't calling a friend or family member. She wasn't calling to check on her children. She was calling 911. She told the dispatcher there was a man outside her home. She said it was her ex. He was angry. He was threatening to shoot. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. Her voice remained calm, but beneath it, there was something else. A kind of stillness that only appears when someone knows something terrible is about to happen, and there's no time left to run. The dispatcher asked questions. Montanae answered. And then, there was silence. Seconds later, her back door was kicked in. She had nowhere to go. No weapon. No protection. Her children were inside. And the man standing in her doorway, Jamerte Brown, was not there to talk. Gunshots rang out. Loud. Sharp, echoing through the walls of a home that was supposed to be her sanctuary. When it was over, she lay on the floor, bleeding, fighting to hold on, fighting to breathe. Paramedics rushed her to Miami Valley Hospital. They did everything they could, but the damage was too great. Montanae Davis, daughter, nurse, mother of 2, was gone. And the reason? The man who once claimed to love her couldn't bear to see her happy without him. A woman's decision to move forward with her life had just cost her everything. In the next 3 hours, we will walk through every detail of this case. We will retrace her final days, examine the red flags, the missed warnings, and the heartbreaking events that led to her final 911 call. We'll uncover the evidence, the investigation, and the courtroom battle that followed. But most importantly, we will remember Montanae. Because this is not just a story of a life stolen. It's a story of control, of rage, of a justice system that must do more, and of a woman who deserved to live. This is the true story of Montanae Davis. And this is how it ended. Dayton, Ohio, a city of just over 130,000 people, Known for its aviation history, tight-knit communities, and quiet neighborhoods where people wave from porches and children ride their bikes until the streetlights come on. But on the southwest side of Dayton, in a modest home where the sounds of cartoons and bedtime stories once filled the air, something unspeakable happened. Montanae Davis was born and raised in this city. She wasn't famous. She didn't live in luxury. But she was well known by those around her for her kindness, her ambition, and the way she lit up a room when she walked in. She had 2 young children, a boy and a girl, who were the center of her world. Everything she did, every shift she worked, every sacrifice she made, was for them. She became a nurse not just for the paycheck, but because healing people meant something to her. It gave her purpose. Her co-workers admired her strength. Her patients remembered her face. Her children, too young to understand the world's cruelty, just knew her as Mommy. She tucked them in at night. She kissed scraped knees. She made the hard days feel soft. Montanae had once been in a relationship with lled Brown, a man whose past was riddled with red flags. Their connection had been intense, sometimes passionate, often volatile. What started as affection quickly turned controlling. Friends say she stopped going out, stopped smiling the same way. She tried to make it work for the sake of peace, for the sake of her family, but eventually it became too much. She left him. It wasn't easy. lled didn't take rejection lightly. He wasn't the kind of man to walk away quietly. There were arguments, threats, apologies that turned to accusations. But Montanae made a choice, a brave one. She cut ties, focused on her kids, on her future. And in time, happiness found her again. She met someone new, someone gentle, someone who treated her with the care she hadn't realized she was missing. It wasn't a whirlwind romance. It was steady, peaceful, the kind of love that made her feel safe. She shared glimpses of that new relationship online, nothing flashy, just photos of smiling faces, short captions about new beginnings. Posts most people would scroll past in seconds. But someone was watching. lled saw them. Every photo, every word. And with each post, something inside him twisted tighter. His messages became more aggressive. His threats more alarming. He couldn't accept that she had moved on. He wasn't willing to let go. The police were called more than once. Reports were filed. But like so many women in Montanae's position, the system wasn't fast enough, or loud enough, or strong enough to protect her. By the time April arrived, she was living in fear, watching her windows, locking every door. She had told family and friends that he was following her, that he had shown up at her job, that he had said he would kill her. They told her to be careful, to go stay with someone else. But she didn't want to uproot her kids. She didn't want to live like a fugitive in her own life. So she stayed. On April 2nd, Montanae went about her day like any other. She got her children ready. She went to work. She came home. By nightfall, the house was quiet. Her kids were asleep. And she was alone, scrolling through her phone, maybe texting her new partner, maybe thinking about what the next day would bring. Then, the messages started. lled was outside. He was sending threats, telling her to come out, telling her this was the end. She knew he had a gun. She had seen it before. She had reported it. But the only thing standing between her and that man was a door that could be kicked in and a 911 call that would come too late. She called the police. She told them he was outside. She said he had a weapon. She said she was afraid. That call would be the last thing she ever said. In just a few moments, the house that had been filled with laughter hours earlier became a crime scene. The front lawn, once scattered with toys, was now swarming with flashing lights. And 2 children, barely old enough to understand what had happened, were left motherless. The man she had once trusted with her heart had ended her life. This wasn't a random act of violence. This wasn't a crime of passion. This was calculated, deliberate, fueled by entitlement and rage. A man who couldn't accept that a woman had chosen happiness without him had made her pay the ultimate price. As investigators arrived, neighbors stood in silence, some in shock, some in tears. Many had heard the shots. Others had heard the screams. But no one could comprehend how something like this could happen on their street, or why the warnings hadn't been enough. This is the beginning of a story too many women know too well. A story of control masked as love. A story of fear dismissed until it was too late. And now, as we continue this investigation, we begin to uncover the history of a relationship built on control, the cries for help that were ignored, and the tragic consequences of a system that failed one woman who did everything she could to stay alive. Montanae Davis did not die in silence. She called. She spoke. She warned the world. The question is, why wasn't it enough to save her? The days leading up to Montanae's murder now read like a warning written in bold, red ink, clear, urgent, and unmistakable. But back then, they passed like shadows on a wall, barely noticed until it was far too late. Jamerte Brown didn't just disappear from her life after the breakup. He lingered. He circled. He showed up at places he knew she would be, uninvited, unannounced. Sometimes he'd just sit in his car across the street, waiting. Other times, he'd send a barrage of messages filled with threats and accusations. He obsessed over her every move, over who she was seeing, over what she was posting. Her life had become his obsession. He was methodical in the way he tried to insert himself back into her world. One day, he'd beg for another chance. The next, he'd warn her that he'd hurt her if she didn't respond. This wasn't confusion or heartbreak. It was a campaign of control. Montanae documented everything. She took screenshots of his messages. She saved voicemails. She told friends, coworkers, even posted subtle warnings on social media about being watched, being followed. People were concerned. But in a world where women are taught to be polite even in the face of danger, where threats are too often dismissed as drama, her fear didn't trigger alarms loud enough. But the signs were there. She changed her daily routine, started parking closer to entrances, made sure the blinds were drawn at night. She was watching her back, always calculating. Every footstep behind her made her skin tighten. Every unfamiliar car sparked dread. She told those closest to her that he was going to kill her. She said it plainly. She didn't sugarcoat it. And still, no restraining order. No arrest. No protection. Each threat he sent felt like a countdown. Jamerte wasn't quiet about his intentions either. He made statements to others, insinuating that if he couldn't have her, no one else would. The jealousy was a fire he couldn't put out. Her new relationship only poured gasoline on it. When she posted photos of her smiling with her new partner, that was the trigger. He messaged her, furious. Accused her of disrespect. Accused her of lying. He called her names. Said she would regret it. Said she had made the wrong choice. Those messages were shared with friends. She didn't hide them. She wanted people to know. If anything happened to her, she wanted the world to know exactly where to look. She even considered going to stay with family for a while, just to get some distance. But she didn't want to disrupt her kids' lives. She wanted to believe that he would get tired and move on. But he didn't. He started driving by more often, showing up at her job, circling her neighborhood. She saw his car so many times, she stopped pointing it out. She just got used to it, like a shadow that never fully disappears. And then, on the morning of April 2nd, everything felt different. Montanae told a coworker that something was off. She had a headache she couldn't shake. Her chest felt heavy. She said she hadn't been sleeping. She looked over her shoulder more than usual. Her instincts were screaming, but there was nowhere left to turn. That afternoon, she posted one last photo. Just a simple moment, her and her new partner, holding hands. By nightfall, the threats came again. This time, they weren't vague. He said he was coming. He said he had a gun. He said tonight was the night. Montanae's final 911 call would confirm it all. The dispatcher could hear it in her voice, measured, composed, but stripped of all hope. She wasn't calling to ask for help. She was calling to document her fear. She was calling to say, if I don't make it out of this, remember this moment. She told them who he was. She told them what he was doing. She told them she feared for her life. And just moments after that call ended, the silence in her home shattered. The back door exploded inward. Her children were in the next room. Jamerte stepped inside, gun raised. There was no shouting, no argument, just a quick, brutal burst of violence. Montanae was shot multiple times. The man she had once trusted stood over her and pulled the trigger without hesitation. Then he fled. The house, once a home, became a maze of blood, broken glass, and echoing cries. Neighbors rushed out, hearing the screams. Someone called 911 again, but help came too late. When police arrived, they found her barely clinging to life. Paramedics worked fast, trying to stabilize her, trying to give her a chance. But at the hospital, doctors confirmed what many already feared. She was gone. Detectives began working immediately. The evidence was overwhelming. The 911 call, the messages, the history of abuse, the clear motive. And yet, for hours after the shooting, Jamarte Brown was nowhere to be found. He had vanished into the night. But the city was awake now. News of Montanae's murder spread quickly. Family members, friends, even strangers took to social media, sharing her story, demanding justice. This wasn't just a murder. This was a warning ignored. This was a woman failed at every turn. And the man who pulled the trigger? Still out there. Still running. And the world was watching. It didn't take long before law enforcement realized the magnitude of the storm that had been unleashed. Not just a woman gunned down in her own home, but a mother, a nurse, a daughter taken in front of her children, in cold blood, by a man who'd been waving red flags for months. The city of Cleveland was on edge. This wasn't a quiet crime in some alleyway. This was a personal execution carried out with intent and rage. Every news outlet picked up the story. Her smiling face, radiant, full of life, now stared back from headlines and television screens with the word "murdered" stamped across it. But Jamarte Brown was nowhere to be found. Detectives knew who he was. They had phone records, texts, voicemails, threats, surveillance footage. They had everything but him. And for nearly a week, his absence turned from a manhunt into a crisis. People feared what he might do next. Family members of Montanae went into hiding. Police patrolled schools and hospitals. His last known movements were carefully analyzed: ATM withdrawals, burner phones, an abandoned vehicle on the outskirts of town. Then came the breakthrough. A call came in from Louisville, Kentucky, hours away from Cleveland. A man matching Jamarte's description had been spotted in a residential neighborhood. The homeowner had recognized his face from a news segment. Police were immediately dispatched. Helicopters roared overhead. Officers went door to door. Canines were released. Neighbors were warned to stay inside. And then movement in a garage. Jamarte had broken into an empty property, attempting to hide in the crawl space beneath the floorboards. He was cornered, sweating, disoriented, exhausted. He didn't resist. He simply said, "I'm done." In that moment, the manhunt ended. But the reckoning had just begun. Back in Ohio, prosecutors wasted no time. He was charged with aggravated murder, domestic violence, child endangerment, and multiple counts of firearm violations. The evidence against him was damning. Montanae's final 911 call was played for the court. Her calm, broken voice, relaying exactly what she feared and exactly what came to pass. It was a haunting piece of testimony, a warning ignored, a woman literally narrating her own death. The prosecution laid out a detailed timeline, every incident of stalking, every violent message, every friend she confided in. They had screenshots of threats like, "If I see you with him again, I'm not going to hold back," and "You think I'm playing? Watch me." They had surveillance footage showing his car near her house the night of the murder. Gunshot residue was found on his clothes. DNA on the shell casings. And then came the bombshell. Her daughter. Only 7 years old, and yet she remembered everything. She had seen the man kick down the door, had heard her mother scream. She had seen him lift the gun. And then the silence, the awful silence that followed. She testified. Bravely. Painfully. Even the defense attorney had to pause before cross-examining her. There was no sympathy in the courtroom for Jamarte Brown. Only rage. Grief. Horror. His own family sat silently, some with heads bowed, unable to reconcile the man they thought they knew with the one on trial. Jamerte showed no emotion throughout most of the proceedings. No apology. No explanation. Only when the final verdict was read did he speak. He turned to the judge and said, "I just lost control." But no one accepted that. Montanae hadn't died in a moment of rage. She died after months of harassment. She died after weeks of threats. She died because the system didn't intervene. The jury returned a unanimous guilty verdict. Aggravated murder. Guilty. Domestic violence. Guilty. Child endangerment. Guilty. Sentencing was swift. Life in prison. No parole. The courtroom erupted, not in celebration, but in tears. In relief. In mourning. Montanae's mother clutched a photo of her daughter and whispered, "You can rest now." But justice, though delivered, felt hollow. No sentence could bring her back. No verdict could erase what her children witnessed. No prison term could rewrite the last moments of her life. Outside the courthouse, supporters held candles and photos, remembering the woman who had lit up every room she entered, who had poured her heart into her patients as a nurse, who had loved her children beyond measure. A mother, a sister, a friend. But more than that, a victim who tried to warn the world. And the world didn't listen. Until it was too late. After the verdict, the courtroom emptied slowly. Some stayed behind, clutching one another in silence, unable to walk away from the place where truth had finally spoken. Montanae's family, surrounded by supporters, faced the flashing cameras outside the courthouse. Their grief was visible. So was their exhaustion. But through that pain, her mother stepped forward. She spoke not with anger, but with quiet determination. "My daughter did everything right," she said. She got away. She moved on. She called for help. And still, she was taken. Those words echoed across Ohio. In the weeks that followed, candlelight vigils sprang up across Cleveland, Columbus, Cincinnati, held by nurses, domestic violence survivors, and total strangers who saw their own stories in Montanae's. Her name became a rallying cry. Montanae Davis was no longer just a victim. She became a symbol of what happens when threats are minimized, when restraining orders are seen as paperwork instead of lifelines, when women cry out and the system shrugs. Her 2 children, still too young to understand the full weight of what they had lived through, were placed in the care of their grandmother. Therapists were brought in. Support systems were built around them. But nothing could fully shield them from the absence that now followed them from breakfast to bedtime. Their mother was gone, and they had seen it happen. Jamerte Brown began his life sentence at the Ohio State Penitentiary in Youngstown. His cell was small, bare, a cot, a sink, a toilet. The only light came through the barred window that looked out over nothing. He had no visitors, no statements to make. His name, once whispered in jealousy or anger, became a reminder of everything lost. Inside prison walls, he was just another numb. Online or through text, her case had proven what advocates had long argued, that abuse doesn't start with a slap or a scream. It starts with words, with control, with manipulation masked as love. The bill gained momentum. Survivors came forward to share their own near misses. Mothers stood before legislators holding framed photographs of daughters who hadn't made it. And slowly, change began to take root. Montanae's former hospital named a nursing scholarship in her honor, awarded annually to a single mother pursuing a degree in healthcare. Her story was taught in domestic violence seminars and law enforcement trainings. A mural of her smile was painted across a clinic wall in East Cleveland, a daily reminder that she had lived and that her story had meaning. Her name is spoken not just with pain, but with purpose. Montanae Davis, a nurse, a mother, a fighter, and a life stolen too soon. What do you think could have saved Montanae Davis? Was justice truly served in this case? Or are there deeper failures we need to confront? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you or someone you know is facing domestic violence, don't wait. Reach out. Speak up. Help is available, and every second matters. Subscribe to our channel for more true crime stories that demand to be heard. Like this video if Montanae's story moved you. Share it to keep her memory alive, and to remind others of the warning signs we cannot afford to ignore. Her voice was silenced, but together, we can make sure her story isn't.